Hi, my name is Jamie Fricker, and I will be briefly presenting on the LGBTQ youth population. LGBTQ is an abbreviated term to describe the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and questioning community. Lesbian is a woman whose primary sexual and affectional orientation is towards people of that same gender. Gay is for a sexual and affectional orientation towards people of the same gender. Bisexual means a person whose primary sexual and affectional orientation is towards people of the same and or other genders, or towards people regardless of their gender. Transgender is used most often as an umbrella term, and it's frequently abbreviated to trans. This describes a range of identities and experiences of people whose gender identity or their expression differs from conventional expectations based on what they were assigned at birth. Not all trans people go or undergo a medical transition or undergo surgery or hormones or anything like that. Q stands for queer in questioning. So historically, queer was used as a slur against people whose gender expression, or sexuality did not conform to the dominant expectations. But some people have actually reclaimed the word, and they actually self-identify as such. And for some, this is more of a celebration of not fitting into norms and being, identified as abnormal, and they actually celebrate that. So that is kind of a tricky one for school social workers, because if you hear the term queer, it might be someone self-identifying as such, or it could absolutely be a form of bullying or harassment. So you definitely want to pay attention to how that's being used. And also questioning is included in that Q. That is the process of exploring one's own gender identity, expression, or sexual orientation. This is something that a school social worker might likely come into contact with working with youth, because that's when the youth are expressing their sexuality and exploring their sexuality anyway. So that might be an identification for the younger population. Common issues that impact the development and learning of the LGBTQ youth population include quite a few different issues. The HRC and researchers at the University of Connecticut found that 95% of LGBTQ teens surveyed had trouble sleeping at night. More than 70% of those teens reported feeling worthless or hopeless in the past week. Only 26% said that they always felt safe in their classrooms, and just 5% reported that all of their teachers and school staff supported the LGBT community. Some of the other issues that are impacting this population also include some major ones like bullying, and this obviously has physical injury and severe emotional distress that can impact these students. Studies show that between 78 and 86% of LGBTQ students experience verbal harassment in their schools because of their sexual orientation or gender identity. Obviously, this is going to increase the risk of depression and anxiety, because it's going to negatively impact their self-image and their confidence, but also that basic feeling of safety and support. Again, going off of that, family rejection is another big issue that LGBTQ youth are experiencing. Studies show that LGBTQ youth who do not have family support are more than 8 times more likely to attempt suicide, nearly 6 times more likely to report high levels of depression, and are more than 3 times more likely to use illegal substances or engage in unprotected sex. Again, with that family rejection, it tends to lead to the final issue that I have listed as homelessness. Between 20% and 40% of homeless youth are LGBTQ. So this correlates strongly with those higher rates of unprotected sex and HIV infection. The role of the social worker, teachers, and staff are obviously extremely important when working with this population. Some possible roles include providing support by being an open ally to the LGBTQ community. So this might be asking students their preferred pronouns when you meet with them, avoiding heteronormativity within your speech, You know, when you're addressing the entire student body and you assume that they all have a dad and a mom, that's assuming that they all have heterosexual parents. And that's something that doesn't really scream inclusion. So it's something that we need to make sure we're practicing on a daily basis, not even just when we're meeting with LGBTQ students, but when we're addressing all of our students and staff. Another one is education. So you might be educating staff, students, and parents on how to start conversations, how to be respectful, what to look out for, you know, as far as bullying or discrimination. This could be providing material about sexual health and safety, because one thing that the LGBTQ youth does not get is specific to them sex ed. You know, sexual education in schools is a highly controversial topic anyway, and they're not going to get anything that is hetero or, homosexual or transgender specific. So that is something that might fall on you as the social worker. And it might also be finding those community resources for them as well and educating them on those resources. It could also mean advocating, so clearly posting the school's policy on bullying. On a macro level, this might entail advocating for student rights, with the current example being the bathroom issue for transgender students. So that might be, you know, writing your congressman or going to the Capitol and advocating when these things are coming up in law. But being out there and actively advocating for the rights of your students. As far as accountability and reporting goes, this could include many different things like discrimination by other students or even staff. You know, if there's a staff member who is non-supportive of the LGBTQ community, you know, it's on you to make sure that you have an open conversation with that staff member and make sure that they understand where, you know, where their opinion crosses the line into discrimination. This is also looking out for suspected abuse within the home. If a student comes out to their family and you suspect that they've been abused, you might be needing to contact child services. You might also need to contact child services in cases where a student is now homeless because of their LGBTQ status. Of course, as always, a huge role that the social workers may have is providing or linking students and families with resources. This information can be helpful for those families who aren't really sure about the LGBTQ community, and this might be new information for them. So on this slide, I actually wanted to provide some of the links that are really helpful for teens and also their parents, and each one is kind of tailored to a different need. The first one is the Gay, Lesbian, and Bisexual Teens Facts for Teens and Their Parents link. This can be helpful to have meaningful conversations between teens and parents, especially, you know, if they've just come out and they're not really sure what that means for them, or and you know, same thing for the parents, what that means for them as the parent of a teen who's now within that LGBTQ community. It answers questions, it has some really good information on it, and helpful information for both teens and their parents. The next one is the Genders and Sexualities Alliance Network. So this is actually a club. It's a student-run club in high schools and middle schools, and it brings together LGBTQ and straight students to support each other and just be a supportive alliance for each other. So, you know, those feelings of isolation are able to be combated with this. The It Gets Better project is the next link. This is just a link that, you know, it's to the project that reminds teenagers in the LGBT community that they're not alone and that it will get better. So this is a really good supportive resource for them. And then the final one is stopbullying.gov. So stopbullying.gov, it's informational, it's geared towards information for the actual LGBT youth. And it's important because they do have unique considerations and strategies to prevent and address bullying for the LGBT youth. So a couple really helpful resources and links that I think school social workers should, have on hand in case they are working with this population. And this final slide is just the reference links of if you would like more information on anything that I've presented here, you can click on these links to get more out of it.